The next time you pass an old warehouse, factory, barn, or industrial building, look up at the roof. There is a good chance you will see a silver metal object spinning in the wind. It has no electrical cable, no motor, no switch, and no fuel source. Yet it can continuously pull trapped heat and moisture out of a building without consuming a single watt of electricity. So why did something this simple, affordable, and efficient almost disappear from modern homes? Most people assume it was replaced by something better. But that is not exactly what happened. The story of the roof turbine is not a tale of technological obsolescence, but rather a complex chronicle of changing aesthetics, human psychology, and the industrialization of the housing market. To understand why these devices were once everywhere, we must first look at a problem as old as civilization itself. Humans have struggled to keep their indoor spaces comfortable for thousands of years. In ancient Persia, architects devised ingenious structures known as wind catchers or badgers. These towering masonry shafts were designed to capture natural air currents high above the ground, funneling cooler air deep into the heart of a building while simultaneously allowing hot, stagnant air to rise and escape through the same vertical channels. These systems were marvels of passive engineering, utilizing the fundamental laws of thermodynamics to regulate temperature in harsh desert climates. They worked beautifully, but their efficiency was entirely dependent on the specific geometry of the building, the local topography, and the consistency of the wind. As the world transitioned into the Industrial Revolution, the need for effective ventilation moved from the realm of comfort to the necessity of survival. Deep underground mines, crowded textile factories, and expansive warehouses required constant airflow to purge dangerous gases, toxic dust, and sweltering heat. Early mechanical ventilation often relied on massive, fuel-hungry steam engines or complex pulley systems that required constant human oversight. Engineers were desperate for a solution that could provide reliable, passive exhaust without the overhead of heavy machinery. This search for simplicity eventually led to the development of the rotating roof ventilator, commonly known as the turbine vent or the whirlybird. The design was deceptively simple. A series of curved metal vanes were connected to a rotating head, balanced on a high-quality bearing. When wind passed across these vanes, the head would begin to spin, creating a zone of low pressure at the roof opening. Simultaneously, the stack effect, the principle that warm air is less dense and naturally rises, pushed hot, humid air toward the highest point of the structure. The turbine provided the perfect exit path. It did not create cold air like an air conditioner. Instead, it acted as a vacuum, drawing out the stale air and allowing fresh, cooler replacement air to be pulled in through intake vents located lower in the structure. It was an elegant marriage of physics and architecture. However, the effectiveness of this system relied on a balanced design. Imagine trying to empty a bottle while covering the opening with your hand. The air cannot move efficiently unless there is a clear path in and a clear path out. A roof turbine is merely the exhaust. Without proper soffit vents or intake openings at the eaves, the turbine would struggle to pull any air at all, creating a vacuum that would eventually stall the rotation. When installed correctly in a barn or a large industrial shed, the results were undeniable. These units required no electricity, had very few moving parts, and could run day and night, provided there was a slight breeze and a temperature differential between the inside and the outside. And this is where a simple piece of equipment can become a business problem. A roof turbine may work for years, but eventually it can need an inspection, lubrication, bearing replacement, resealing, or complete replacement. For contractors, roofers, handymen, HVAC technicians, and property maintenance businesses, keeping track of those jobs can become harder than the repair itself. That is why having an organized system matters. With Invoice1Pro.net, a service business can create estimates and invoices, organize customer information, schedule jobs, record expenses, keep project notes, track work, and manage important business details in one place. Whether you operate a construction company, handyman service, roofing business, cleaning company, landscaping business, or another service-based operation, Invoice1Pro.net can help keep the business organized while you focus on the actual work. You can learn more at Invoice1Pro.net. But the biggest reason these turbines disappeared had nothing to do with whether they worked. As residential construction evolved, several practical issues began to plague the reputation of the turbine. The first was the issue of mechanical longevity and noise. Over time, bearings could wear out, and dust or corrosion could cause the spinning head to grind or wobble. Because the turbine was physically anchored to the roof deck, those vibrations would often travel directly into the attic and through the ceiling, manifesting as a persistent rhythmic squeaking or rattling that drove homeowners to madness. One noisy turbine could ruin the reputation of an entire brand. And eventually, the stigma of the whirlybird became too much for many to bear. Then there was the perennial fear of water intrusion. Anytime you cut a hole in a roof, you create a potential point of failure. If the flashing around the base of the turbine was not sealed perfectly, or if storm damage shifted the unit, leaks were inevitable. Homeowners, often unable to distinguish between a bad seal and a bad product, began to view the turbine itself as a liability. This perception was exacerbated by the rise of new, cleaner ventilation technologies. Powered attic fans, solar-powered vents, and sleek, low-profile ridge vents began to dominate the market. These newer products were easier to market as high-tech solutions, and they lacked the industrial, spinning aesthetic that many homeowners now associated with old, leaky barns. And later, you will see why builders may have preferred a cleaner-looking roof over a more efficient one. The modern housing market is driven by curb appeal. Developers and homeowners associations often prioritize uniform minimalist roof lines. A spinning metal turbine, which looks undeniably industrial, became a visual distraction that didn't fit the vision of a pristine suburban home. Builders began to opt for products that were visually discreet, even if those products required electricity or were less effective at moving large volumes of air. The turbine, once a symbol of industrial progress, was relegated to the status of an eyesore. Furthermore, the lack of a standardized approach to ventilation design contributed to the turbine's decline. Many homeowners would add a turbine to a roof that had no intake ventilation, or worse, they would mix turbines with ridge vents and gable vents, causing the systems to short-circuit. Instead of pulling fresh air from the soffits, the turbine would simply draw air from the other vents, rendering the entire system useless. This led to a widespread, albeit incorrect, belief that turbines simply didn't work. In reality, they were just being used in poorly designed systems. The final reason reveals something uncomfortable about how modern homes are designed and sold. We are now in an era where speed of construction and ease of sale often trump long-term performance. A ridge vent is easier to install during the shingling process, requires no maintenance, and is invisible from the street. For a developer, the choice is simple. The turbine vent did not necessarily disappear because physics stopped working. It disappeared because modern construction decisions are influenced by more than performance. Maintenance matters, installation speed matters, builder familiarity matters, appearance matters, buyer perception matters, and profit margins matter. Sometimes the product that survives is not the one that performs best in every situation. It is the one that fits most easily into the system used to design, build, market, and sell the property. Roof turbines are not perfect, and they are certainly not appropriate for every roof. They may be useful for certain warehouses, garages, workshops, and older homes with properly designed intake ventilation, but they should always be selected and installed based on the specific climate, roof design, and existing ventilation conditions. The next time you see one of these silver turbines spinning above an old warehouse, do not dismiss it as a forgotten piece of outdated machinery. You are looking at a device that uses wind, temperature, pressure, and geometry to move air without a motor and without electricity. It was not completely defeated by a superior invention. In many places, it was defeated by noise complaints, installation mistakes, competing ventilation systems, changing construction practices, and the desire for a cleaner-looking roof. The turbine did not stop working. We simply stopped wanting to see it. If you enjoy discovering the hidden history, forgotten engineering, and surprising truth behind ordinary objects, subscribe to the channel. There are more inventions all around us whose real stories have almost been forgotten.